Yugoslavia. Occupying the northeast part of Europe's Balkan Peninsula, it's a country whose landscapes are as varied as its people. The crystalline Adriatic washes a deeply indented 6,000-kilometer-long coast that is strewn with islands, while the Dinaric Alps stretch dramatically from north to south, dominating 70% of the country's inland territory. Plains of yellow wheat sweep northward from the Sava and the Danube rivers towards the great Hungarian plain. Industrialized cities, rustic villages unmarked by the ravages of time. It is a land of 24 million people, 3 main languages, and 24 ethnic groups. In 1991, the thin veneer of tolerance between these groups peeled away. Slovenia, then Croatia, declared independence. Croatians' Serbian minority opposed the move. Bosnia declared its independence a year later, against the resistance of the Bosnian Serbs. The conflict escalated. In March 1992, the UN Security Council approved the creation of the United Nations Protection Force for the former Yugoslavia.
S'ils décident de faire telle affaire, ils vont le faire pareil. Même s'il y a du
When they decide to do something, they'll do it. Even if there are UN troops around, it's the best proof we could have had. We were right on their position. We were with them. We could see them. They were shooting over our truck on a village 3 kilometers away, and they just told us they'd do it. They knew we wouldn't stop them, because our mission isn't to tell them that they can't shoot. We're there for humanitarian help.
The worst thing about it is you got 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kids, and the parents pounded into them. He's the opposite. We don't like them. We kill them. This is the way it is. And they're going to tell that to their kids 20 years down the road.
A good example of that is they're trying to get to the kids. I noticed when I was at a store in one of the little villages, there was a store, and they have, baseball trading cards. Well, they've got Crow Army trading cards. Okay, Private Vladimir, killed so many Serbs and all this stuff, and he's like this big hero, That's what they're doing. And you got a piece of gun with it too.
Nous autres, on a une mentalité au Canada que les enfants.
In Canada, our children are almost sacred. We take care of our young. But when you see that this little kid doesn't even have shoes, and he comes and asks you for candy, you feel like you have to give him some.
Some kid came up to me with a hand grenade and pulled out a hand grenade on me. Now, I'd only been in the country for 3 days. My buddy automatically drew on him, and I just stood there and looked at him and started trying to talk to him, and I didn't know what he was trying to do. My buddy's got his weapon pointed at him, and I'm scrambling on the radio trying to tell my patrol, which is only 200 meters away, exactly what's going on. This kid gets nervous, his friends get nervous, the kid runs off, and he runs into one of our target houses. From that point there, we have our patrol, which is just down the street, come down, block off the house, because it now gave us a reason to go into our target house. That was the only thing that stopped us from raiding it. And it ended up turning into a big riot. We had about 30, 40 Serbs there, most of them just drunk.
Quand vous portez un beret des Nations Unies,
when you wear the UN beret, they use you to express their power, their influence. They want to have something up on the other side, and the other side doesn't want to give up anything. We need a lot of tact and diplomacy to get them to back down. Sometimes we have to be very subtle, and we have to be persistent in our interventions.
I went there with stars in my eyes, thinking we're the UN, we're going in there, and we're going to sort this thing out and let these people get on with life. I'm not pessimistic about it anymore. I'm a realist in that, no, we're not going to sort it out. There's no will from either side right now to have the situation resolved in what we would consider a civilized manner.
Shelter!
When you first arrive, you'll look around and see all the bullet holes in your room and stuff like that, and if you even have a room. And then, you know, after 2 weeks, it's just natural. You get used to it, and, you know, seeing a rubbled house is, you don't even notice it anymore.
Some of the guys lived in actually acro trailers, which are about 20 feet by 15 feet. 2 guys, which is really comfortable and nice. They have electrical outlets. But where I lived, we didn't have anything. We moved down to Sector South. We had no showers, no washrooms. We did the old Vietnam style, pour the diesel in the bucket, burn it off every morning. The showers was, we had wells. Throw the bucket down there, pull it up, take a deep breath and throw the cold water on you.
In Visigo, one day you would work. You would do something really interesting, like convoy duty or something else. But some days, you had nothing to do, so you would sweep the place and fix it. But in Srebrenica, you never stopped. You would always have guard duty or something else to do. That's why I went right away to Srebrenica, so that the time would go a little faster.
On a travaillé vraiment beaucoup.
We really worked very, very hard, sometimes almost night and day in the beginning, to set up positions with sandbags, because the Serbs were right in front of us, and they saw us like every day. Often, we would be harassed by their fire, and we had to hurry to set up some kind of wall to protect ourselves.
On a normal day, if we were doing nights, we'd patrol all night, set up at irregular hours checkpoints in certain roads, like roads coming out of certain towns and stuff like that. And once we finished patrol, we'd come back with the carriers. We'd do maintenance on all our weapons, 50 cal, because it could be raining or whatever, and the 50's been up in the rain all night. And the driver and his partner would check the levels on the motor, on the diesel motor on the carrier, and check for any wear in the track or whatever, any maintenance that we could do during a maintenance day that would be coming up. Once we'd had all that, we'd have something to eat, and then we'd crash out for 6 hours or so.
On essayait de plaire à tout le monde.
We tried to please everybody with our Quebec menus or menus of our region.
De notre région, des fois on faisait.
Sometimes we would make poutine. We didn't make it often because it's difficult to make for a large number of people. But we tried to please everybody. Sometimes we would make some cordon bleu, seafood, spaghetti, pizza. The thing was, keep everybody's morale high.
What we did within our own organization to try and keep things normal, first off, birthdays. If a soldier had a birthday coming up, we made it an effort to go out and see the cook, score a cake for him, and have a bit of a celebration. Identifying the fact that it's your birthday, it's your day. We'll try and cut you a little bit of slack today. But as far as, well, it's Friday night, we couldn't. You were operationally effective all the time, and with our crew, you were allowed your 2 beer a day, and it was very, very strictly controlled. And that was one of my jobs, to make sure it didn't get abused, because we didn't have the luxury of being able to say, well, somebody else will cover off for us.
You start to talk to locals when you know faces, and they talk to you, and they loved Canadians. There was such an excellent association between us and them. Before we left, we were told, like, don't leave. I'm telling you right now, don't leave, because if you leave, then we're going to start things back up. The town that we'd calmed down over the 9 months at the UN, that the 3rd Battalion and 2nd Battalion were there, we calmed it down to such a point where people go back to school and stuff like that, shops started to open up, and then to find out like a week after you've left, right, that it's just all gone to pot. It's gone back to basically where it had left.
If we were in a Croatian village, we would give some things to the Croats. If we were in a Serbian village, we would give things to the Serbs. It was the same thing with the Muslims. We didn't take sides. Because we're there to maintain peace, we're neutral. But the belligerents have trouble understanding that.
Apart from Canada, to my knowledge, there was no other country over there involved in the peacekeeping operation that did not have a tie to either the Serbian or the Croatian side, either prior to the Yugoslavian outbreak or World War I, World War II. There was always a tie there. And in the peacekeeping operations, it became very evident when you pull up to a United Nations checkpoint with the United Nations flag on it, but it was being occupied by a Serbian soldier.
I had direct contact with probably about 6 or 8 other nations in terms of viewing their quality of the individual soldiers and their non-commissioned officers. I will say in all candidness, there is not one of them that can match up to how we train our soldiers and what we expect our soldiers to do at the very lowest levels.
Because one thing is certain. When we're asked to do something, we don't waste any time. We don't take the easy way out. We execute our mission as quickly as possible, according to fundamental combat principles. We accomplish it quickly and efficiently.
Right from square one, our soldier in Canada gets a sense of fair play that carries him through his whole peacekeeping experience. And I'll tell you one thing Canadian soldiers have is they have a sense of courage that some of the other nations do not. When we go over and we see something is wrong, our soldiers try to make it better regardless of the risks. They genuinely say, this is a wrong thing, and I am over here, I've been well trained, and I'm over here to do a job, and I'm going to do the job.
A UN sergeant from the Canadian Infantry Regiment risks his life to find out. The first body he checks is dead, but next to it is a woman still alive. She has to be rescued, and the sniper is still out there, maybe as close as only 200 yards away.
We have to make sure we understand certain principles, and that is that we must respect the other guy. When we respect those around us, we're in a position to advance and to be respected. But as soon as you deny that respect to an individual, you basically deny who he fundamentally is.
Pour moi, j'ai été plus impliqué à Forchnica. Puis, dû au combat sévère dans le secteur,
I was involved in Foshnica. Due to the heavy fighting in the area, the hospital staff had left to take shelter a little further away.
fait que nous autres, on a reçu la mission de,
Our mission was first
premièrement de se rendre là-bas. C'était déjà
to get
une
to the
mission
hospital.
de se rendre jusqu'à l'hôpital.
It was a mission in itself,
De déployer les efforts nécessaires pour apporter
and then
ces gens-là
to do whatever was necessary to provide the people who were there with the care they needed to survive.
Là, ça faisait déjà 3 jours que
When we got to the hospital, the staff had been gone for 3 days.
Tu fais juste ouvrir les portes, puis t'avais une odeur. Là,
You just got the doors open and you got that horrible smell of excrement. We went in there all wearing small surgical masks. We walked around in there, we assessed the situation, and we saw that the children were really badly off. My men had to pick up dead children, carry them outside and bury them. It was that bad.
Le Seigneur Tout-Puissant la bénisse, il offre aussi sa bénédiction. Au nom du Père et du Fils et du Saint-Esprit. Amen. Did not poussière.
Okay. Yeah, there's kids that did not make it. I mean, with the cold, it was cold, they had no food and all that, and as you saw probably inside, some of them are not strong as others are. So the less strong, if I can say, well, did not make it.
Lorsque j'avais un soldat qui est sorti avec
One of my men came out with a dead child. He was carrying him in his hands, and he went to bury him. You got a really close look at suffering. And then a child died in his arms. He had him in his arms, and the child was alive, and a minute later he was dead. And then we had to take him out, and it's tough on the soldiers because they do their best to help, but when one of those kids dies... After that, we spent 2.5 days cleaning the hospital from top to bottom, washing the floors, the walls, whatever. We cleaned it all.
Quand on est arrivé là-bas, nous autres, il y a pas mal d'ouvrages de fait.
When we got there, a lot of work had been done. It looked pretty good compared to what it was like when they got there. But when we arrived, all we had to do was maintain the place and try to find a way to disinfect the clothing, the babies, everything.
We had the availability of a weekly phone service when operating. There was a satellite link back to Canada and allowed people to talk to their loved ones, and this was extremely important. As well, a lot of people made quite a good idea was to prepare themselves for going overseas by sort of getting their relatives together and tweaking their imagination about what to send them, and care packages and such things take on an extremely important part of your life. And I can probably will always remember that Tuesday night was care package night, and that was when the Herc would come in and the post would be delivered as soon as possible out to the troops.
I was glad because most of the time he would come in with some mail. It was mainly the mail that we wanted, together with the care packages. We got some sweets, cookies, all kinds of things. There was also some food, but the military supplies came second for us. We needed the supplies for sure, but the first thing we wanted was the mail. We were looking for the mail. We wanted to read it. When I saw Eric, he would tell me what was happening in the observation post, because I was always on the road. Eric could tell me that, well, this week there was some .50 caliber fire and some shelling over our heads. All kinds of stories like that.
Well, on Sundays, I would have Sunday services for them. Sometimes it would be on Monday or Tuesday, depending on when I could get to them. But my primary role was what we in the church call, it was a ministry of presence, just being there.
I went back home. I went back to Quebec, and my reason was that I have children. 3/4 of the guys went home to Quebec because they have friends and children. Some went on leave with their wives to Greece or something like that. You have 2 weeks leave and you can go wherever you want. But it's different when you go home to Quebec for 2 weeks. For me, the second tour, the last 2 months, was longer than the first. When you first get there, it's new. You don't know what's going on. You're there for 4 months. You throw yourself into the job. But then, you take a 2-week break, and you know you still have 2 months to go. You don't like it anymore. But it doesn't matter. It's part of the job. You have to do the job.
Oh yeah, went home, got married. And then we went on the honeymoon. And then, what was that, day after the honeymoon, a couple days after the honeymoon, I was back in Camp Hall, and they're telling me, oh, your company bugged out the Sector South. And I was wearing my new cowboy boots, jeans and a t-shirt going, oh yeah, where's my kit?
You get bugged out 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever timing it is, and you're all groggy, you're tired, you really don't know what's going on, your shirt's not done up, your bootlaces are undone, and you're running out the tracks. The APCs are fired up, ready to go, and they're already rallied and lined up, ready to move. And this happens within a matter of between 5 and 15 minutes. You're ready to go. Your weapon's there. And you really don't know what's going on. It's kind of curious. Okay, what am I getting into?
A lot of our troops came under fire for an extended period of time because the agreement was the UN would go in and they would neutralize both sides of the line, so that you had the Croatians and the Serbians were faced off at each other. And the agreement was half of the Canadian troops would come in and take the Serbian gun positions, and the other half of the Canadian troops would take the Croatian gun positions. So that was the agreement, and everything there is written in invisible ink. I mean, as soon as it touches the page, it disappears. But we went in, we took the Serbian line, and the Serbians were supposed to retreat back, let's say, 1,000 meters. They only went about 100 meters because they wanted to watch the show. Because what they were expecting was, when we went in to take the Croatian line, the Croatians would fire on them and we'd take off. What happens when we went to take the Croatian line and the Croatians wouldn't back out? So we ended up fighting a small battle here, and at the same time, the Croatians kept firing at the Serbian line, knowing the Serbians had backed off, but knowing it was Canadians. So that went on for almost 3 days.
Got to be about 4:30, 5 in the afternoon. So I was pretty close to supper time, so I told Dago, Pendlebury, and Hamilton, grab all the stove and the water and set up like a kitchen in our artillery shelter, and start brewing up some rations so we could have something hot to eat, because I don't know how long the hell we're going to be there, right? So they're like, okay, right on, Sarge. We grab all the kit, they go down in the artillery shelter. They're in there, getting the stove going, getting the rations on, getting the coffee on, and we're sitting there, and all of a sudden all hell broke loose. Bang! And they started firing everything from AKs to RPKs, 7.62, 20mm chain gun from Divasella, the mountain. It was about 2,000 meters away. Everything just came right through our position all at once. And all of a sudden it stopped, just like that. Just like it started, stopped, looked around. Okay, now we got to really think about this serious. We got to dig that C6 in right here. We laid down on the ground in the prone and we dug that C6 trench down about 3.5 feet in about 20 minutes. Just dug like madmen, 3 guys. And we had like just adrenaline right up, and we're sitting there and we're looking at each other, and we just start busting a gut, because it's the funniest goddamn thing that happened that day, right? Us cowering like idiots in the bottom of these holes, because we've never been fired upon, you know.
The first thing you get is a sense of clear thought. Your adrenaline just starts flowing. You start to process the information, very logical, but it's not logical to a normal person. It's based on your training. Your programming, your training starts kicking in, and okay, I got to do this, and this, and this, and this, and these are the priorities. And that kicks in. It works. You don't realize what you've actually done until 4 or 5 hours later, when you sit down and the adrenaline starts to come down. You start getting the shakes, stomach cramps, hunger, thirst, just wicked.
And then about 11 o'clock she cranked up again, and Simmons and me and Daigle and Pendlebury, and the boys, we all stood to, and we gave it to them again, because it kept hitting us from the same place. So we had our anticipated orders, everyone reacted, and we just had at her. It was like each one we got better and better at winning the firefight. And that one was very short, 45 seconds, maybe a minute, exchanging fire.
The next day, after we had been told that we could actually cross and we had calmed down the situation, there was no more actual firing, and we rolled that first company across the paved road, and we found that the Croats had blocked the road with mines and anti-tank barriers again. Here I had an entire company lined up on the road, spaced 25 meters apart, APCs, perhaps 14 to 20 of them, lined up in full view of the Croatian forces. And on a hill 200 yards away, there were 2 or 3 anti-tank guns, about a company of soldiers dug into trench lines, all with their weapons pointed at my men, who were in a very vulnerable situation. There were mines and evidence on both sides of the paved road, so you couldn't just swing off and get yourself into cover. And I got into a tremendously excited argument with this guy at the actual minefield. And I said, you have to clear those things off. We were completely aware that ethnic cleansing was going on 3 kilometers away in all the area that they had taken over, and we had to get there and try to put a stop to all of this murder of innocent civilians and the destruction of their property.
And then all of a sudden we could start seeing smoke going up through the trees. I look at the map, and it was Licky Sitlak, the Serb village that the Croats had taken when they took part of the Medak pocket. So I'm going, oh yeah, well they're burning stuff in the village. And all of a sudden, boom, right? What they're doing is they're ethnic cleansing the village right in front of us. It was only like 800, 900 meters away.
And I told this guy, get these things out of the way or we're going to roll through. And he turned around and gave a signal, and the Croats flipped off covers off a 3 Sager missile system sitting there on this hill. And my guys saw them, and they all cocked their 50 caliber machine guns and trained the machine guns on these Sager gunners, and my TOW missile systems turned over and locked onto the anti-tank weapons. And one wrong trigger finger here, and it would have been a disaster. And I'm sure we would have pushed through, but the cost would have been horrendous. And in the end, the force of will and our professionalism and the fact that we were not going to back down forced them to lift the mines off the road, and we pushed through. But there was a period of about an hour there that it could have gone either way, and it weighs heavily. Not at the time. At the time, you know your people are ready, you know you're doing the right thing, and you eventually win through.
Searches were conducted of the area, searches were conducted of the buildings, ones that had been blown up, and bodies had been found. And the bodies that were found were in various states, mutilated, shot, and it wasn't people you'd expect to be involved in the conflict. You'd expect soldiers to have been shot or be casualties of the fight, but 80-year-old ladies, men, young ladies. One of the buildings they went into, in the basement, there were 2 ladies found that had been bound and burnt at that point. They were found that they had been burnt, and there's a lot of speculation as to what had happened to them prior to that.
Une journée, il se tirait dessus, l'autre journée, il était mis contre les forces serbes.
One day they were shooting at each other, and the next day they would fight together against the Serbs. It was quite difficult to understand. Okay, the Muslims are with the Croats, or the Croats and the Muslims are killing each other. It was really quite difficult to understand how the conflict would be resolved.
Moi, je me suis même fait offrir un cadeau d'un belligérant musulman qui me
I got a gift from a Muslim belligerent. I still have it at home, and I'll keep it always, because it moved me that he should give me something that he might never be able to have again, and yet he gave it to me. So it moved me. It was a guy who was going every morning around 5 to cut his hay. He would come back around 2 p.m. to drink his coffee at our OP, and he would even help us fill up sandbags, and then he'd leave to go to bed. He would be back in the morning for a cup of coffee before going out to cut his hay and work in his fields.
Coca-Cola kid, he was physically and mentally handicapped, and he couldn't speak Croatian, he couldn't speak any language. He would mumble or just kind of jabber on. But he could get his point across, and he loved Coke. That's the one thing he just loved. Coke and candy. He couldn't get enough of it. But his absolute favorite was Coke. So the guys adopted him because he would always come to the stand where the main OP was, the observation point. And that's tended where the kids would gather around. And the guys would, whatever they had, they'd share with these kids. But the Coca-Cola kid was, I guess, special in one way. He was the first one to approach the stand, and he would badger the guys until they gave him a Coke.
Ça m'apporte beaucoup, et puis ça m'apporte certainement beaucoup d'autres, une satisfaction.
It means a lot to me, and it certainly brings personal satisfaction to a lot of the other guys. I'm really sure, deep inside, that I've accomplished an excellent mission. The first 2 months I was there, I kept asking myself if Canada is really making a difference. I began to realize when we'd set up a convoy to leave a position, and the people would set up a human chain to tell us, no, don't leave. I realized that if we weren't there, perhaps there would be some ethnic cleansing going on. We're supposed to go back there. I hope that my name will be on the list, because I fully intend to go back.
Moi, je l'avais déjà demandé de rester là-bas 6 mois de plus, puis je me suis fait refuser.
I'd already asked to stay there 6 more months, and I was turned down.
Après, il l'avait demandé aussi.
As was the next guy who'll be on the chair after me. He asked to stay too. I really liked the time I spent in Yugoslavia. I tried to help as many people as possible, as much as I could. As far as I'm concerned, I give the maximum. And no, I think it has been a good experience for me. I joined the Army to experience something like that. I experienced it. I'm quite satisfied. I felt death close up quite often, but that's a kind of go for it. That's me. I like that.
The day my plane left, or the day I had to get on the bus to go to the plane, I worked until a half an hour before that, because I thought if I just do this one more thing, then I'm going to make more gains in all of my efforts here.
And here you're sitting in first class or first class seats, watching Whoopi Goldberg movies, flying home, eating peanuts. I was like, this is strange. And then that night, you were at home. You were back in Canada.
Oh yeah, my wife took some time to get used to my being home again. You know, you put your wife in a situation where she is the boss. She does everything for 6 months, takes care of the bills, the kids, everything. It's normal that when I get back home, I want to be in control. As I say, the boss is back. That doesn't fly.
Avec les enfants, pas de problème. Les enfants, eux autres,
With the kids, no problem. The kids are glad Daddy's back. They adapt very quickly. But it may be that it happens too fast with the kids, so that the wife feels a little left out. The kids have no time for Mom now that Daddy's back. Dad is a star. He's come back from Bosnia. My kids are in school, so their friends are all talking about it. So Dad is a star, which means that Mom is a little left out, and that's when friction starts. It takes a lot of good communication and work. I think when you come back, you mustn't be afraid to discuss the feelings you've had over there.
We got flogged with so much psychological stuff. It just wasn't fun. I think the military kind of overdid it there. We went to so many psychological lectures, right? Like half the stuff I didn't even think about until after I'd already been briefed on it. Right? I was single, but I did notice a couple of things. In Yugoslavia, you just don't walk in the grass. You stay on hard packed stairs because of mines and stuff like that. Here, I wouldn't walk in the grass. Just natural reflex not to walk in the grass. Walking downtown, you're always looking up at building tops. You're always looking behind you. You're just a little bit more observant. I went home, and my friends were coming to me and saying, "Well, how many did you shoot? Right? How many prisoners did you get?" And I don't know. It wasn't like that. And then I started showing them some pictures of, where I was at first and how I went along and what I did and different things that they had seen in the news where the reporters had blown it all out of proportion. And actually it was just minor, pretty little town. We went in, did our job, did what we were supposed to do. If there was an incident, there was an incident. We took care of it and went about our business.
Les médias rapportent des choses extrêmes, puis ils te le montrent dans une période de temps qui est très...
The media show extreme things, and they show them in very short periods of time, in a minute or two.
Tandis que là-bas...
They show you a lot of action in 60 seconds.
Fait que t'es pas affecté.
Over there, the same thing can occur in several hours, so that you're not affected in the same way. At first, I expected to see dead people all over, streets full of bodies, blood, a lot of things like that. But it wasn't so. I saw those things, experienced some too, but not intensely.
Parce que les médias, ça arrive souvent qu'ils veulent pogner
Often the media wants something catchy. They want a scoop, such as prostitution and those kind of things. And the military gets a lot of dirt in that regard, because the media generalizes on all the military. I heard in the media or read in the papers something about prostitution, and a few days later, my wife writes to me a letter asking me to explain what's going on with the women, prostitution, that kind of thing.
It's a matter of somebody in a loose-lip moment saying, yeah, you can get just about anything here for nothing. A pack of smokes, you can get just about anything. You know, you want a girl, a pack of smokes, you can get her. A loose-lip comment, and that's brought home and put in the paper. Well, to him it might not mean anything, but to us, it means a lot. And to our families back here, it means a lot. And that's the biggest thing that the media has got to understand. We're over there doing a job, and any negative publicity that's given over there, okay, it's great to sell papers. It's super for headlines. But the amount that it destroys back here, and the problems it causes back here, is incredible.
I mean, I think for the guys in terms of the press, for the most part, it's typical, I guess, you know. The only way you get in the press if it's bad news. Where were you when the guys were fighting gun battles for, 18 straight hours? Where were you when they were picking up bodies out of ditches? And where were you when they were trying to get hungry people fed? Where were you when? So all the great work they did, the hours they put in, the time, the personal sacrifice and effort they put in, zip. You hear nothing. And one or two difficulties makes everybody in the airborne sort of a racist baby killer. And I'm thinking to myself, no. Canadians, as soldiers, they are individuals. They actually express themselves as individuals. They make individual decisions when they go there. They don't have to do some of the stuff they do, but they choose to, almost to the man.
Je suis fier de tous les membres du groupement tactique, quelle que soit leur origine.
I am proud of every member of the tactical group, whatever his origin, because they make up an extraordinary team that executed a hard mission in extremely difficult conditions, where our hands were tied more often than not. They understood that through their own small daily contribution, they got to know themselves better. They know themselves much better now. And they also know their limits, together with the frustrations that are their daily lot in those circumstances. Canada is heaven on earth. That's enough. It's heaven on earth. We have nothing to complain about. That's why when we come back here to Canada, I check my car and I say to myself, well, even if I don't change it next year because it doesn't look so great, that's okay, I don't mind.
Really opens your eyes, when I got back to Canada, I was like, hey, this is the greatest country in the world. This is.
I'm always proud to be Canadian. I'm a Quebecer, a Canadian. I'll always be a Canadian, and nobody will be able to take that away from me. The day they bury me, it'll be over. We won't talk about it anymore, but I will always be a Canadian.
The biggest thing I honestly believe is, as a Canadian, you're a Canadian. If you come from Manitoba, you come from Manitoba. You come from Quebec or Ontario, wherever. That's where you come from, but you're Canadian. And as soldiers, when we're doing our job over there, I hand it over to a French unit from Quebec. And there is not a French-English thing there. It's not a Quebec-Ontario thing or a BC thing. We're Canadian soldiers. We're wearing the same flag and we're doing the same job. And our handover was excellent. There was no animosity between the two groups. It was great. And if we can do that in a combat zone, what the hell's the problem in the rest of the country?